Hello and welcome to another Archaeology Rush change list update video. This is the fourth one now. If you haven't watched last week's video, I really suggest watching that because that is a playthrough of where we're currently at with the Archaeology Rush game stuff. So, let's crack on. I've got loads of little fixes as predicted if you saw the last video, where basically a load of things just went a little wrong. So just to get started, the first thing is some of the minor fixes. So I was talking last week about how the tutorial team was sort of broken in one particular area, like not unplayable, but it just had an issue. And this one in the room called the Troll Toll Room. It's sort of like the idea is that there is a sort of mummy that is waiting for a toll, and then that toll will open up the door. Now, the reason why this has been the reason why this exists as a concept is because the game, like this puzzle, the game kind of existed as like a multiplayer game, and I know that most of the time I do playthroughs on this channel because I don't have clones myself. I just play it as one person. So the point of some of these puzzles aren't always as obvious, but the point of this is that you want to become the most valued sort of archaeologist and the most, what's the word? You want to be like, yeah, the archaeologist with the best collection. And the problem is that if you as a collective need to open up a door and one person needs to pay a toll, who pays it? So those are kind of the questions in some of the puzzle design that I've been working on. Who pays that toll? So essentially, this was just teaching that take a treasure and you give it to the guy. But the issue is that the door just did not exist. So the door existed on the map, but it did not exist in terms of the actual when the level was loaded. And that is because we have a little collection. There's actually a load of stuff. So there's a whole button down here, and there is this thing called an AND node, which doesn't have a kind of physical representation. And we have the door. And this is something that I've written called a game object collection. And a game object collection is basically just something that exists and will spawn in items depending on what's needed. And this kind of allows me to have a single room shape and then have multiple different possible sort of room types that can be in. And basically, this game object collection, all the reason why, if these sort of types in toggle, if these aren't configured correctly, the game won't actually load those items. It will kind of unload them. It will take them out of the system. But if they are, it will make them kind of visible and part of the game objects. So we have a setup here. This is like a troll toll setup. And you see this is also a game object collection, and it takes a troll toll. Now this final button collection, we can't just delete it because of a quirk of Godot. Or actually more accurately a quirk of the way that I'm doing this, which this is inherited off the G corridor T, which is the tutorial corridor, but it's the troll toll version. And it's a inherited version of the scene. So this is an inherited object, which is why this button exists all the way down here. But because we do want to spawn this, so we want to spawn it in all cases. So at the moment we have an array of types that mean that it would spawn it. So this could be troll toll or anything of that type. But we don't want anything. And if we just tick invert, it means that it will spawn for every case. So that is what we're doing. Now, how does this door actually open? So this button exists all the way down the bottom. So essentially we take in our trial tool, we take a final door and just add our new door to our final door. So yeah, that is kind of where that issue came along. But yeah, so that now we actually have the door working properly. I also took out this treasure and put it on this location here so that the treasure always spawns where we've got this kind of outline of the treasure. Cool. So next issue that I just want to talk about is basically how to stop the save system from wiping the data. It's a problem that I've ran into a couple of times now, and kind of frustratingly, I hadn't fixed it properly the last time, so I kind of went belt and braces and let's fix it. So I'll explain the issue that we had this time round. So basically, same as in our letter. So this is our letter manager. It handles all the letters. In our letter manager, we clear all the data in the letter chunk before we save, just as a kind of safety, so that we can just make sure that the data doesn't get duplicated. Because we essentially want to take the data that's in the letter manager and apply it onto the letter data chunk. So here we clear the data, but that means that if any of this code errors out, we cannot actually be in a position to write the data correctly, because it will just fail and C# will kind of halt execution there. And it doesn't mean that the program crashes because of the way the C# works, but it does mean that you cannot guarantee that anything past this point will return, will actually function. And we'll kind of step into how we can catch those errors and ensure that we have that safety. But the issue was, before I added in a triad, I was just adding in the data to the saved meta array. Problem is that if there is already a meta with that value, so if in dictionaries you have something with the same index, it will of course fire an error saying, hey, there's data with the same index, and that will throw an exception. So the way that we kind of managed this was, the first thing we needed to do was just serialize the data into an existing save data. So we have the kind of dictionary of the save data that we expect to have working, first of all, like the original data. And then what we need to do is we then try and save our object, but we wrap it around in a try catch, and that basically catches any exception that this onSave method does. And this means that any object afterwards will still continue to save data correctly, but this one will fail. And if there was a save error, it kind of breaks out of this loop, it logs this error, and if there was a save error, it goes back to the chunk and says, hey, just load back the data you originally had. Just reset it to a state that we originally had. And it means that, yes, okay, we're not fixing the original error. There's still an error in our system, but that error is not catastrophic in such a way that we can't, we lose all data. Like, that's the worst case scenario, is there's an error and we lose the data. The worst thing now is that there's an error and something doesn't save properly, but we still keep the remaining data. And so if I program the rest of the game right, even if there's something wrong in that particular instance, we are actually in a position where most likely that'll be rare enough that if there is a save error, that we're actually somebody can redo an action hopefully their save isn't completely corrupted. Well, that's the intention of this, that the save isn't completely corrupted. Just a note on that, there was a bug last time out, which essentially, if I load into the map, meant that, if I load into map and let's say I played this tomb, but previously I had played a tomb in England, the character would reset to this location instead of where it's meant to be saved. This is actually due to the save bug as well. Essentially, because if there was a save issue in sort of the first thing that was saving, then it would stop everything else past it from saving correctly. So now everything saves, even if something further up the chain errors out, which means that actually that reset issue doesn't exist in the same way anymore. I've also added in some minor fixes just to be able to stop that from being an issue now as well. So let's jump over to some of the graphical work that I've done this week. So the first thing I want to show you in the graphical work is this animation frame stuff. So I basically added in the colors, the different colors for these characters. Now I know this one has an outline, so that's something I probably want to take away at some point. But I didn't do this in this set of changes. I'll probably mark a note to make that change in the future. But yeah, essentially just swap these out. I did consider making a material and sort of doing a palette swap. Probably could have been easier and simpler to do, but actually, if this becomes a problem and I've got to edit 3 files in the future, then great. At the moment, this is the simplest thing that works, and it's just easier. Yes, it's sort of worse in both time and performance, but sometimes it's the quickest one to implement right now. So that's what I've done. But the other thing that I've done, which I think is pretty cool, is I've just added in, not sure why this is sort of appearing like that, but that's fine. It's easy enough to fix. A slide, the ability. So previously the slide graphic wasn't actually implemented, and so now I've added in the slide kind of graphic for each character, and yeah, I quite like this. So she's kind of bracing for impact here, and yeah, it's sort of bobbing up and down. I think it's a good little animation. To compare it to, it still kind of fits a very similar thing where with Henry Pepper you see sort of his belly go forward and he's sort of bracing and lurching. John is sort of, let's update that. That's the wrong value. John is kind of sturdy, and then Lily is sort of, again, let's get the right number in there. She's sort of a little bit more sturdy, but also just kind of controlled. And so I like the idea of the recruit basically being a little bit like, whoa. So yeah, that's kind of a fun thing. It's just adding in those colors. So now that when you load in as those colors. And so the other thing I just wanted to show off was some font changes. So I went through, and some of the feedback I got from other people playing was actually that some of the font wasn't as readable as I'd like. So if I jump into the game here, essentially I've made 2 changes to fonts. I've gotten 2 font types called Dreamcatcher and Text Scholar is the font names as far as the font files. They'll eventually be in the kind of credits. As far as I'm aware, the licenses are royalty free. And if we jump over to our dialogue test and jump in, the intention is the name here is sort of in this kind of 20s style. And then we've got this kind of more typeset font. I do like the font that I wrote, and it's still something I want to keep around for certain bits, particularly on things that need to be read and are useful to be read, and also like for names. I think having a more stylistic text sort of is more appropriate. And it's something that just at the moment I'm kind of playing around with. So if we jump in and we jump into the first bit of dialogue, you'll also notice that it's a lot more readable. And so the main difference between this text and the previous text is that this one I can actually scale up in size. So the other one is a bitmap font, and it means that it's set to that one size that I've drawn the graphic on. But this is sort of scalable, and so actually being able to do it at different sizes makes it kind of more achievable. So yeah. And then I've got one last thing to show you, so I'll just back out and show you that one. Right, so I'm going to jump back out to this default level, and if we come out into our campsite and open up our letters, that is the main thing that I want to show, is that it might not look fancy at the moment, but I am using the controller. So you can probably hear me click. Yeah, I'm using the kind of controller to be able to select stuff, and we can actually just have that. Let's try and find a more interesting letter. But yeah, so we can turn this around, and it's all controllable via controller, and then we can return back to the map and come back out. Now, that all looks nice and simple, but man, it took a lot of work. And I also got the controller working for the new profile and setting, and the old settings menu as well, which I've done a lot of work in the back end of getting the input system so that it can handle just free controller without a particular player being registered. And so I'm using a lot of that work, but a lot of the other work, and we're going to jump over to the title here, is just around not the controls window. Let's open up the profiles window. So we've got a profiles window here, and if we select our select profile button in this window just here, you can see kind of how the focus system works. So the easiest system, a lot of this I kind of written myself, not realizing that Godot had a way to do a lot of this. And so just saying to Godot, right, this is the neighbor left, this is the neighbor top, this is the neighbor right, neighbor bottom, and next and previous. And it just cycles through that. And our dialog boxes also work in that way, where the accept button goes, if you press up, it goes to the profile name. If you press right, it goes to the cancel button. Same with that. If you press any sort of up or right or left, it goes to the proper button. And when you sort of press new profile and this is open, it will by default grab the attention of the cancel button so that it can all be controlled via this display. So yeah, I'm kind of happy with the way that this has turned out. And I think that whilst there is more work to be done on the profile system, the fact that one of the things I want to do is to be able to put this game on my Steam Deck and play it and show it off to anybody else, and so that anybody can play it is completely playable by a controller. Like, yes, it's easy on a day-to-day for me to test on my keyboard and mouse, but what that means is that the work to get it working with controller just doesn't get done by default. And so actually going back and redoing that work is important. So yeah, on that note, thank you for watching. Have a wonderful, wonderful week. I've got a chaotic week because I'm moving into a new home, which is wonderful and exciting, but yeah, stressful at the same time. So we're gonna get that. So I'm hoping that I get some work done this week. But we might have to have our first kind of feature review video as kind of cover, but we'll see where we're at. Yes, and just in terms of updates, the Henry Pepper version actually is very, very close to finishing. I have some final tweaks to get done, mainly on script, and then just testing 2, 3, and 4 player, and then adding in just some form of credits somewhere. And that is the last things that I need to do for the Henry Pepper side of the demo. And then I'm going to release the demo on Steam. I think I'm going to just try and update different places so that actually this is a real nice point to have got to. And then we can start working on Amelia Giovanni's version of the demo, which is exciting. More levels as well. So yeah, thanks for watching. Have a wonderful week and goodbye.